This was back in the early 2000s when I would go and visit my uncle and grandfather, and my uncle would take me on rides on his motorcycle out in the back country. They lived out in Minnesota and had miles upon miles of beautiful backcountry roads that were sparsely traveled. It made great for riding around on a motorcycle. I have so many fond memories with me and my uncle, going riding for 30 minutes to an hour in the evening, just enjoying the wind blowing against your face. There were several times that we had a few bull elks here and there. That was pretty cool to see. I saw more deer more times than I can count, but I kind of figured that's usual for being out and about in the countryside. However, that was all ruined for me one night when my uncle decided to take me on a night motorcycle ride. He had never taken me during the nighttime, so I was ecstatic for the adventure. Plus, he told me he was going to take me on a different route than he normally takes. This excited me even more so. Oh, I should probably mention that I was only about 9 years old at the time, so I was still very young and very impressionable. We get on his bike and we're going off. He starts to take us down some roads that I wasn't too familiar with, and they trailed off and forked off of our usual routes that we would sometimes take. I was having the time of my life, even though there were hardly if any streetlights around, because hey, we're on the backcountry, and it was darker than dark. But I felt safe with my uncle. It's hard to say how long we were riding for before it happened, but at some point down one of the roads, my uncle and I turned our attention to this loud crashing sound to the right of the road, just as we were passing it. It sounded like one of those Tomcat construction workery machineries that people drive around. It was so loud, and I remember thinking, is construction going on right now, this late at night? Just as we were passing, and I promise you on this, and I don't want you to think I'm crazy, the trees open up, and this large demon thing bolts out on all fours, begins sprinting after us on our motorcycle. I am screaming bloody murder, and my uncle kicks it into high gear, and we go soaring down the road. Of course I was behind him, so I really had no idea how fast we were going, but if I had to guess, maybe 80 or 90 miles an hour. Whatever was chasing us was keeping up with us and was slowly inching closer and closer. I don't know what the hell it was, but the closest comparison I can make is if you've ever seen the Van Helsing movie. I think it came out in 2003. At the very end, he fights off Dracula and turns into this massive, monstrous wolf-looking creature. What I saw looked very similar in size and stature. The face was very similar to a giant snout full of crocodilian-like teeth. It had a sort of dog glow in the eyes, kind of like a red-orange color. It looked to me like somebody crossed a crocodile and a wolf with a splash of human and demon. This thing was hulking in size and dwarfed not only me, but my uncle and the bike. If I had to guess, I would say it was around 7 feet tall on all fours, with the head as big as my uncle, or so it seemed. It chased us for a minute, and then got extremely close to the bike, like it was going to reach out and grab us, but then it just jumped right off into the woods, and vanished, just like that. I was still screaming and hysterical until we got back to his house. What happened that night was one of the most traumatic things to have happened in my life. I had to undergo therapy for a while, and it really messed me up seeing something like that. I think my uncle even gave up on his motorcycle license for a while, but I didn't really talk to him about it or knew how he felt. After that, I didn't ride with him on his bike anymore, and I kind of shut down for a while. I stopped going over there, and a few years later, I would come to find out that my uncle had a massive heart attack. It's a shame because I was close with him at the time. I guess I should have found out how he's come to terms with everything, but I'll never know now. I just wish I knew what it was. I don't think it was any known animal that I've ever seen or heard of. And when I say hulking and demonic looking, I mean it. This thing came straight out of hell, and you could just feel the evil emanating off of it. I have never felt such fear in my life. I also think that part was due to the fact that I believe it was toying with us. This thing was so massive, it could have caught up to us and ripped us both off the bike and eaten us right there. As it kept up with us and acted like it wasn't even breaking a sweat or trying to keep close. It's almost as if it just wanted to let us know that it could get us anytime it wanted, and we were helpless. I can't shake those feelings. I don't know what you want to call it, whatever it is I encountered that night, but I will tell you it was evil, and I don't wish that for anybody, ever. So, I've been a big follower of your channel for some time now, and have never had any cryptid encounters myself, or anything strange. As you know, everything has been shut down with the quarantine lately. That is, until just a few days ago when they opened up hunting. Well, everything else is still pretty shut down, but that's my one solace, and just in time for turkey season. Where I live, there's actually a few groups of turkeys traversing around the area. In fact, this area is so popular for turkey hunting that it's not uncommon that every year I have people that pull up to my property asking me if they can hunt. With the season opening back up, I've been really wanting to get me a big tom for some time now, and was worried that the season would never open back up. The only issue that I have is that I haven't seen the groups of turkeys that I saw last year. What's even more disturbing is the other day when I was walking around, I found several dead turkeys that weren't whole, if you know what I mean. I'm talking turkeys being ripped into pieces. Not all of them, and surprisingly, some of the girls or female turkeys that I have found with their heads completely torn off. Yesterday, about half a mile away from my house, I found a big tom that would have been perfect, but his insides had been ripped out entirely, and his neck was broken in half. It was a mess, but there was no blood. That's the weird thing. And I noticed also very large canine tracks. I know for a fact we don't have wolves, only coyotes at most. Well, mountain lions, of course. The neighbors around here don't have any dogs that I'm aware of, and I've been here for years now, so I believed I would have seen them. Plus, I live on private property, and I've never seen a dog here before. I could take a picture of the tracks because they are rather large, and I'm not saying it's a Dogman, but it's really similar how everything I hear from your channel matches up with everything that I'm experiencing and seeing in person. Mutilated cadavers and large canine prints. It's just a red flag for me. I have not heard a single gobble gobble, or any sort of sign that there are live turkeys around my area, which, again, deeply disturbs me. Every May is usually full of turkeys, and there are plenty to go around, but not this year. Something has been killing them off, and there are no natural predators that I know of that would just mutilate a turkey with good meat on it and leave it. Think about it. A mountain lion wouldn't just leave a cadaver like that. And a pack of coyotes, well, the cadaver would disappear. Even wolves. No predator that I know of is this messy and kills for the sake of killing. Again, I'm not saying this is definitively a Dogman, but I just find it really creepy now that there's such a striking similarity between what I hear and what I'm actually seeing with my own eyes. I should reiterate that the canine tracks are enormous. I haven't measured exactly, but my whole hand can fit inside the print. There didn't look like there had been much of a struggle on the turkey's end, and like I said, no blood either, which is so strange. I have not heard anything at night or during the day that would lead me to believe that I have a Dogman problem. I have not heard any silence in the woods, nor have I felt anything weird, nor have I seen any weird shadows darting around the woods. I'll just have to keep my eyes and ears open and attentive to my area and let you know. Maybe other people have caught on by this point of the year, and so I've already had at least 3 to 4 people pull up and ask me if it's okay. This year so far, I've had 0. The quarantine might have something to do with all this, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll just have to keep you updated. I know this last summer, I encountered something paranormal and out of this world, but I'm not exactly sure what it would be. My friend and his family are convinced it's a skinwalker, but I believe it was something else. I do know a little bit about Skinwalkers and Dogman, and Bigfoot too, and I don't believe what I encountered was everything that matches up to what a Skinwalker is. My friend's family thoroughly believes that this was the spirit or being that represents a Skinwalker, and well, I believe it was a Dogman, or potentially a Dogman's spirit. Last July, I went and visited a close friend of mine who is native and lives on the Navajo reservation. We've been friends for years and met during a work retreat long ago. I thought I would make a vacation out of it by going to visit him. I stayed with him at his trailer for about a week or so, and then I went with him to go visit his family. His family is very enriched in Navajo culture and lore, and his mother especially can be very superstitious at times, but as of this event, I don't blame her for anything she believes or doesn't believe, or so I thought. My Navajo friend never really talked about skinwalkers or cryptids or anything that goes bump in the night. I guess I can't blame them, since it is a part of their culture not to talk about those things in fear of drawing them to you. I truly don't know how my friend felt about all that stuff because, well, he never really talked about it. When I met his family, which this was the first time, and they were very nice and lovingly invited me into their home to stay. His mom pulled me aside and warned me of her brother that had turned to the darker side of things and would sometimes appear around here at night just to start trouble. I didn't really understand what she meant by that, and at the time I thought she was just referring to him being a lowlife and a drunk and wanting to cause drama, so I left it at that. It's not like I haven't encountered my fair share of bums before. I never really asked my friend about his family or anything like that, so to my knowledge, my friend's uncle was nil. We stayed there for a few nights, and everything was as normal as you can get. On one of the nights, all of us were outside having a bonfire, talking, laughing, and eating good food, just like we had the nights before, when after a short time, my friend and his family began to get really quiet, and the laughing, good times and all, turns into a serious, stoic expressions. It was in that moment that I remember I could feel a shift in the mood and tonality around us. I don't know how else to describe it to you, but that's the best way I can. My friend and his family spoke together in Navajo in hushed tones, and I didn't understand a drop of that language, so I left trying to interpret the tone and demeanor as to what was being spoken about. After everybody got quiet, my friend started talking to his family, and they're very concerned. It was almost as if they were trying to conceal their voices from maybe not only me, but something else. At the time, I thought they were just trying to conceal their voice from me, but who knows. My friend turns around and walks up to me and says we need to go back inside the trailer right now. Confused, I thought we were having a good time, but he just keeps walking to the trailer and quickly keeps motioning for me to follow him, so I kind of just shrugged my shoulders, going along with whatever was happening. His dad was trying to put the fire out quickly, and Mom was rushing both me and my friend into the house. We got to the house, and the mother kept looking out the window, waiting for the father to run back up into the house. The father goes in and grabs the gun, and all the doors and windows become locked thoroughly. Now I'm starting to freak out just a little bit, because I wanted to know what's going on. Normally, you wouldn't have fires out here at nighttime, for fear that it may draw in terrible, terrible spirits. But I guess in this case, looking back, they had their whole property and family and house blessed, so they had weekly bonfires. Well, more like nightly, since they didn't have to worry about those kinds of things. Or so I thought. My friend comes up to me and whispers in my ear that his uncle is outside, and it's going to cause problems. I looked at him strangely and asked if he was drunk and that we needed to call the police. That's when I heard its super loud bang on the trailer. The mom and father both shrieked, and the dad put his back up against the front door with a gun ready in his hands. At this point, I'm starting to freak the hell out, because I don't know what the hell is going on, but whatever it is feels ominous as hell. You could start to hear these heavy footsteps walking around the trailer outside, and heavy breathing. It didn't sound human. It had a There was so much gruff to the voice. Whatever it was, whoever it was pacing the trailer slowly, as if looking for a weak spot to try and break in. That's what it felt like to me, and I was becoming scared, terrified more likely. My friend and his family kept motioning me to be quiet and to listen, and this went on for probably a good 45 minutes, if I had to guess, but it is hard to say, because time feels like it's an eternity when you're in the moment. After a while, things got quiet for another little bit of time. Dad looked at us all and said we needed to leave the house now to be safe. With gun in hand, he motions for all of us to run outside and jump in their old van and flee. Me, still not knowing exactly what is going on, I'm kind of left with no choice but to tag along and to go with the flow, so scaredy cat me runs out with them and hops in the van. As his dad is basically throwing us in the back of the van, I heard the most horrifying screech or roar that I've ever heard from behind the trailer, just off a little ways in the darkness. It sounded like a mix of a bear, crossed with a wolf, crossed with a dying woman being murdered. It sounded like it came from the pits of hell. I think that was the point in the night where I really felt true fear go down my spine. I felt like I was in danger. My friend and his mother were pale, and the mother was starting to cry, praying in Navajo. His dad is swearing in Navajo, and he's trying to get the van to start. I think it was an old beater van that had problems with the ignition, and it had issues starting up sometimes, if I remember correctly. I think I do remember at one point, though, my friend mentioned that they needed to have the whole engine replaced, but didn't have the money. Anyway, he gets the van going, and we're flying out of there onto the main highway. Now at this point, remember, it's nighttime. There ain't no lights around, except the stars outside. He's doing probably close to 70, maybe 80 miles an hour, and he's flooring it, trying to get away from where we just were. And we're all quiet in the back. Nobody's saying a word. When my friend looks up and looks out the window of the back of the van, he starts screaming and pointing and shouting something in Navajo. I look, and catching up with the van is the largest wolf I've ever seen in my life. I guess I could call it that, because it resembled a wolf, but it looked so much more evil. It's like a wolf that came from hell, and it had kind of a smoky vapor to it, if that makes any sense. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's almost like it had black smoke emanating from it, and it had glowing red eyes and large teeth, like some sort of saber-toothed wolf or something, and it was massive. It was running on all fours and getting closer and closer to the van. We're all watching in horror, and then this thing just darts off to the right of the van and increases its speed to not only keep up with the van, but keep up on the driver's side window. And at this point, it's right next to the dad, and he's keeping up at about 80 miles an hour. We're all screaming. His dad pulls off of a fork in the road that was conveniently, thank you Lord, just a little bit ways off of where we were in that moment. The road is a little bit more rough, but he decided to go down that way to try and ward off the thing or whatever was chasing us. While he starts going down this road, the next thing is that this thing just disappears. It's a more primitive road, but by primitive, I mean it still has concrete and stuff, just hasn't been taken care of. So there's potholes and parts of the road that are severely cracked and damaged. We go down this road for I don't even know how long, maybe an hour, but that might be a bit of a stretch. At one point, he just pulled over and parks the van in the middle of nowhere in the pitch black of night. He sits there and just starts sobbing against the wheel. A grown native man sobbing. My friend and his mother didn't say a word, and I'm not even sure what was going on. I'm trying to process what just happened, and there was some freakish demon wolf thing chasing the van the size of a car. I kind of blacked out, to be honest. I felt like it was so traumatic, my brain just had to escape and register that I really wasn't in reality anymore. My memory is kind of fuzzy, but I can tell you that we did end up sleeping in that van. It wasn't comfortable, I can tell you that, but I think we were just all so exhausted from sheer fear. I have no idea why it stopped following us and why his dad just pulled over to the side of the road, leaving us all vulnerable. But whatever it was, we didn't see it after we pulled off. I remember opening my eyes and it being daylight, or at least just starting to see the sunlight come out. with his dad outside of the van looking around. My friend and his mom were still asleep, and the dad just hops back in the van, turns the van on, and begins to turn back around to where their home was. I was exhausted and still terrified, but I didn't have the energy to ask what had just happened. Somewhere along the way home, my friend and his mother had woken up from their slumber, and we all just kind of sat there in silence, in trauma from the night before. At one point or another, we pulled back into their house and were all getting out of their van when the dad and mom walk up to the house and start talking nervously again in Navajo and praying, dropping to their knees. There were deep scratches all over the house and door. It looked like several Kodiak bears tried to maul their trailer. It was bad. My friend is trying to calmly talk to his parents as best as he can, and they're both so worked up they can't even think straight. My friend comes to me and pulls me aside and tells me we should leave, that it's not safe to be here anymore. I wasn't going to argue or try to ask questions. I just went along with everything, and gladly so. In the last 12 hours, I felt my life had flipped upside down entirely. We left, and the rest of the visit wasn't the same at all. My friend had completely shut down and didn't really speak much. Fast forward a little bit, and I was able to finally talk to him and what had happened that night. This is where things get a little creepy, and I really started connecting the dots. Turns out my friend's uncle at a young age murdered his little brother, or in this case, my friend's mother's youngest brother, whom at the time was a small child. This in turn caused him to be banished, and he took and turned to dark magic, becoming a skinwalker. They had a name for it that they called it, but I can't remember it. Basically, a skinwalker. Her brother became animalistic in nature, living in the wild and turning to evil. He had tried to come back, time to time, to torment his sister and my friend's family, taking the shape of hideous beings and animals. This is why they believed him to truly be a skinwalker. However, it gets more terrifying than this. That night in July, when we experienced what we did, it was later found out that her brother, whom had turned to evil practices, committed suicide in a satanic ritual of sorts that same evening. This led to further speculation that this was the actual evil spirit whom dwelled in his mom's brother, had come to enact revenge on the family for banishing years before. That's what he and their family believes now. Why it stopped following us in the van after some time is also another interesting story. I guess it just so happens that not too much further down the road, where his dad had pulled off, lived a medicine man in the community whom had much of the area blessed and had warded off dark spirits before in the past. This friend of mine, whom I won't name for respect of him and his family, claimed dark spirits were afraid of him. All the pieces started to connect more and more as time went on. Myself, I'm not really sure what to think or believe. I know their entire culture is very enriched in that sort of thing, and warding off bad spirits, but this was on a whole other level. I didn't think spirits or demons, call them whatever you will, could take physical form like what I saw, and chase down a van at 80 miles an hour. I do watch creepypasta stuff, and things on Dogman, BIGFOOT, etc., so to see this in real life was more than terrifying. It was as if I was in a horror movie. It sure as hell resembled a Dogman of sorts from what I could see out of the back of the van, but by resembling, I mean it just looked huge, hulking, like a hulking satanic saber wolf thing. I don't have an answer for you, but it caused me to shut down for weeks until I could finally talk about it with my friend and get some closure on what exactly happened and why. Maybe it was the spirit that dwelled in his uncle that came and attacked us. I have no idea. My friend and his family had prayed heavily for me in Navajo since I was there with them, as this happened so as to not attract any more of these things. They firmly believe that once you have a sighting with one of these, you become marked for more encounters. His parents had had their house blessed multiple times before this happened, in fear that her brother would return and seek revenge on her, as he had tried before. My friend had told me that this was the reason why this spirit or being wasn't able to enter their house, because it had been blessed by that medicine man. I know that skinwalkers and dark spirits are very much a part of Navajo and are very real. I couldn't imagine what it would be like dealing with these things on a normal basis. This almost makes me question what the definitive line is that really separates cryptids from spiritual beings. Are dogmen spiritual beings at all? Or are they just demons masquerading in physical form? After sitting on all of this for quite some time now, I've come to the possible conclusion that maybe dogmen are just spirits taking physical form and going after people, which is kind of what they do anyway. I could keep going on, but I'll end this and say that no, I don't believe this was a skinwalker. I believe it was a dogman in some way, shape, or form, regardless if it was a spiritual or flesh and blood being. I think there is more to generality in cryptids being spiritual beings more than we would like to think of, with all the ties to opening up portals to other dimensions and seeming to always not be around when we're looking for them. If you want to count the lack of blood trails from when they are shot, well, that's a whole other ballpark to get into. Besides, whatever chases a van down for as long as it did possessed supernatural power in its own right, and I know that no flesh and blood being alone, or at least just an animal, could have done that.